Hello, dear chess friends. I'm FIDE Master Aleksa Alimpic from Serbia, and I welcome you to my new video course. In this course, we'll talk about tactics and calculation. In the course, I will not only give you exercises to solve, but I will also try to teach you and explain to you what should be your process of thinking, how to find these ridiculously looking moves. It could be hard, but if you follow the path how to find these moves, you can find them very easily. So this is the first position. In this chapter, we are talking about forcing moves. I think this is the best to start with because this shows you how should you think and calculate lines. In this position, we should first of all take a look at what is white threatening and evaluate the position. So here we can see that this is very unbalanced position. We should count the material, of course, to see what's going on. So we have three minor pieces, 2, 4, 5 pawns, 2, 4, 6 pawns. So we are down a pawn. Our king is still in the center. You're playing black, by the way. This was Firuja's game, Alireza Firuja, in Title Tuesday on chess.com. He missed a winning chance to immediately win the game. So first of all, we can see that white is threatening to take this pawn on c6, and what many people do wrong is that they try to defend this pawn, and then they have candidates such as rook c8 defending the pawn, maybe king d7. They don't focus on their potential attack, and they are wrong. You should not think like that. What should you do? You should consider forcing moves first. So that is checks, captures, and threats. So you realize that while threatening knight takes c6, you realize that you evaluated the position and you see that strategically speaking, if black doesn't have anything concrete, white is simply better because black's king is still stuck in the center. So you have to do something forcing. What forcing moves do you have? First of all, we should look at all possible checks. Even if they're looking ridiculous, you should still calculate them because they may work. For example, here we have only one check, that is rook h1 check. We should consider that as a candidate. It's a possible check. H file is open. We should consider it as a candidate. So what else do we have? What forcing moves? We have this capture on knight takes f2. We should consider that as well. Also about threats, very obvious moves like queen h7 or queen h5 threatening mate in 1, queen h2. So we should consider all these moves. Let's start with queen h7 or h5 because we are simply threatening mate in 1. If we play queen h7, the problem is now white can take this bishop on c4, and after queen h2 check, white has king f1, and we have no more checks. Usually when one side has free-enchanted bishop, their king is safe and we cannot trade this bishop. So we have no checks, we are down a piece and this line is not working. So we should go back to the starting position. We realize the problem of this queen h7 and queen h5 moves. So next, what should we consider? Knight takes f2, um, king takes f2. There is nothing that black can do here, so If you see that it's not working, you should come back to the starting position and try to look at other candidates. So here, please pause the video, try to find the winning move, and we will see if you find it. So in the game, Firouzja played d5, which could seem logical. You know, you're defending this c4 bishop, and now queen h7 threat is real because there is no queen c4. The bishop is defended. It was played in the game. It was blitz game, so it's not really relevant. But here, white can play e takes d5, and after c takes d5, there is knight d3, taking control over f1 square, so that after queen h7 and check, there is king f1 for white. So we see that this move is not working too, though it's not forcing, so it should not come as a first candidate to our mind. What should be our first candidate is rook to h1 check. It's a check, we should consider it first, the most forcing move. Even if it looks ridiculous, it is possible move. So rook h1 check. Let's play it. So here bishop takes h1, king takes h1 loses due to queen h7 check. So this check now comes with tempo. So white is not in time to take our bishop. And after queen h7 check, king g1, queen h2, it's mate. So white is not able to recapture with the king. He has to capture it with the bishop. So what's the point now? What's the difference between starting position and this position where we are down a rook? Well, the difference is that now after we play queen h7 or queen h5, again white is not in time to take our bishop because we have queen h2 check and white's bishop is not on g2 anymore. So after king f1, we can actually take on f2 and it's mate. So that's why rook h1 is important intermediate move to play it first and then go for this line. Though it's still not the end of the line. After queen h7, white has one nice defending resource. So wait a second. So queen h7, white can play king g2 and try to escape with his king, while f3. It is a possible move. It is the best move and the only try for white to save the game. Let's play moves. So queen h7, king g2. Again, we should not think about defending our bishop on c4 or defending our pawn. We should think about checks first. And checks that we have here are queen h2, the most obvious, knight e3 check, which is not working. If you see that it's not working very quickly, then you should remove it from candidate list. For example, knight e3, rook e3, it simply gives nothing. So queen h2 check, he has to play king f3, and his king really looks vulnerable here. We can take on f2. I don't want to make moves on the board very often so that you can train your imagination and vision. I usually do that with my students, and when I calculate, I don't make moves on the board. I imagine them, and with doing that, I also train my imagination. So that's why I'm making arrows. Queen h2, king f3, queen takes f2. White has only one square, that is king takes g4. So then we can evaluate the position and see that it should be good for us. His opponent's king on g4 is very vulnerable. So we can play the moves because it definitely works. And now we should look for candidates again. Checks first. We have two checks. Bishop e6, bishop e2. Of course, queen e2 is not working. You should not spend too much time calculating it. But bishop e6 check looks more logical because if bishop e2, then white can take the bishop and try to escape with his king. Because he's a rook up, material up, he can afford him to sacrifice exchange like that. So bishop e6 looks more logical. King h5 is the only move. Again, we should look at checks. We have bishop f7 or queen h2. Bishop f7, white can go back with his king to g4. We can give a check on e6 and it's just a repetition, we don't get much. But we have queen h2 check instead of bishop f7. Let's play it online. So king h5, queen h2, king g6, and there is mate in one, queen h6. So I think this is really good example of forcing moves and um, process of thinking when calculating. Always consider checks first, captures, threats. These are forcing moves. You should not spend too much time thinking about defending this pawn. This pawn is useless because it's dynamical position. So let's move to the next position. Um, here, um, so here we are playing black. So again, count the material, evaluate the position, look at White's threats or his plans, and then come to candidates. You should not immediately look for some checks or so on. You should evaluate the position first, see what's going on, and then look for candidates. Here, again, count the material. So we are up a pawn. We have this extra f pawn. What can we say about position? Our pieces are quite active. Queen is on f2. This bishop could be more activated. It's not doing much on f8. But our pieces are, I would say, we are up a pawn, but it's not clear advantage because our c6 pawn is unprotected and white can easily play something like queen a8 and attack this pawn. We have no way to defend it, so we should try to act fast. We can see that white's queen is offside on a file on the queen side. His king is alone on h2. He has this knight on e2, but our queen is on f2, so his king could be in danger. So we evaluated the position as black is better, we are up a pawn. White has some compensation because c6 pawn is very weak. So now we should look for candidates. What candidates do we have? Again, first of all, look for forcing moves. So look for checks. We have check knight g4 check. This is one candidate. Do we have any other checks? I don't think so. So what are candidates? Capture candidates. We can take on c5 with the bishop or with the knight. Alright, so we have three candidates. And now let's start calculating. This is basic, very simple, structured plan how to think, though maybe those of you haven't heard of it. So knight g4 check, white has to take on g4, otherwise If king h1, we have queen f1. So if h takes g4, knight f6 makes sense. Attacking this pawn on g4. If knight comes in, it could be dangerous. So knight f6, it's attack. We have this check on h4 too, but after king g1, king g1, we have check. We don't have check on e1 actually. His queen controls c1, so this check is not doing much. We don't get much. There are no checks to follow it. We have knight f6, though. Then there is queen d8, and we cannot capture on g4 due to pin. So queen h4 is a good trial, but a good try, but it's not working. Knight g4, h takes g4, knight f6 is our other candidate, attacking the pawn on g4, so attack. King h3, you can play king h3 to defend this pawn, and to be honest, it doesn't seem like we have any attack. We sacrifice the piece, we're down a piece, and so we should give evaluation to this line. Let's say it's equal or unclear. We're definitely not worse because white king is not safe. We can at least sacrifice even on g4 with complicated game ahead, though it's not working. So uh, we took a look at check, knight g4, it's not working. Then let's take a look at our other candidates. Our other candidates are taking on c5, knight c5, or bishop c5. Bishop takes c5 seems more logical, because in case of d takes c5, now e5 square is available for our knight, while in case of knight takes c5, d takes c5, still we cannot activate our bishop to d6. We can take the pawn on c5, but we don't have any threats. We sacrifice the piece. We have three pawns, but there is a way better move for black. So we compared these two forcing moves, candidates, and we realized that bishop takes c5 is stronger, more logical, and we should calculate it first. So bishop takes c5, d takes c5, the only logical move. Queen d1, you can play king g7 and it makes no difference to d takes c5. So d takes c5, and we have, as I said, this available square for our knight. After knight e5, we are threatening knight takes d3 and also knight f3 check. And after king h1, queen f1 mate. And actually, here white is simply lost. He cannot deal with these two unstoppable threats. He has to either give up a bishop or to allow f3, and white is winning. Sorry, black is winning after it. So here white may as well resign. So we calculated knight g4 first. It was an unsuccessful try, and then we considered other forcing moves. Bishop takes c5 and knight takes c5. So that's it for this position. Let's move to the next position. Here we are playing white. Again, a valid position, so and count the material, of course. So we have two minor pieces as well. 2, 4, 6, 7 pawns, 2, 4, 6, 7. So okay, material is the same. Then we have to valid the position. Black has bishop pair. His bishops are very active and could be powerful. This bishop on f4 defends e5 pawn. So e5 pawn is protected. His rook is on e8, defending the pawn. So we can see that our king is a bit safer than black's. Black's king on g8 is vulnerable. This h6 square could be available for us. All right, so we can see that bishop is overworking. Bishop defends e5 pawn and defends h6 square. What are other weaknesses in black's camp? Well, his rook on f8 is not active. Could be trapped, but it's not something that we can do very quickly. We cannot trap it and attack it very quickly. So, okay. What are black's plans? I don't see any plans for black here. So we should calculate forcing moves first. Okay, we have this check knight h6. After bishop takes h6, we don't have anything. If rook f3, rook g3, black can just move his king to h8. Alright, so we have this attack. Okay, we also have this capture on e5, though after bishop takes e5. Again, we don't have anything. We have this nice attack, pawn to g3, and we also have this capture on f4, rook takes f4. So let's start with capture first because it's more forcing. So rook takes f4, e takes f4. Now we can see that h6 square is available for our knight to jump. So it's a check, of course, so we should calculate it first. Knight h6 check. Black has only one move, king h8. Then again we should look for checks. We have this check on f7. Knight takes f7, it's also captured, so it's very tempting to play it. Black cannot take it because e8 is hanging with mate, because back rank is weak. So knight h6, king h8, knight takes f7. Black has to play king g8. Then again we should look for checks. We have knight h6 check, king h8. And alright, here if you're calculating this line in your head and you see that you have at least a perpetual check, then we can make moves and try to find if there is something even stronger. So knight h6, king h8, knight f7, king g8. We have knight h6 check. Rook takes c8 is another forcing move, though it doesn't seem like it gives much. After rook takes e8, knight h6, he can play king f8. Now that square is available for his king, so it gives him extra option of playing king f8. Then we should consider knight h6 check first, king h8. And now the difference is that after we take on e8, rook takes e8, we have pawn to f7. It's not a check, but it's attack, and we are also threatening bishop f6 mate. So it's double attack. Rook takes e8, takes e8, f7. And bishop f6 is coming, it's game over. There is no check on e1, because our bishop controls this square, and white is simply winning. So you can see that it's this line, for example, it's very hard to spot it immediately if you don't know this way of thinking, that you should look for forcing moves first. Also, it's good to note that g3 also can appear to be strong. Its attack, we are attacking the bishop. Only d2 square is available for the bishop. If he goes bishop g4, we can take on g4 and it will be very similar to the main line. So bishop d2, rook e2, and you may think that the bishop has to move away from d2, and if black plays bishop a5, we can grab this pawn or give a check and have a good position. Indeed, it is true, but here black has one nice resource, and I will flip the board, and so please, I will ask you to pause the video and try to find the best move for black here. It's good to test your knowledge now. So, knowing this way of thinking, you are not calculating bishop a5 first, you are calculating forcing moves. What forcing moves black has here? Well, black has bishop takes g4, it's capture, and also we have attack or threat, pawn to h5. In case of bishop takes g4, you should calculate it first because it's more forcing. There is h takes g4. We can move our bishop back to a5, though this pawn appears to be weak. White can play like rook f5. It is very dangerous. And we cannot go back to h6 due to pawn to g5 and our bishop is trapped. So what do we do instead? We calculate pawn to h5. It's counterattack. So pawn to h5. If the knight moves back to f2, then we can go back to h6 and our bishop won't get trapped. If white takes on e5, then we have bishop takes h3, and it's very double-edged position. White managed to activate his bishop pair, so it is very dangerous. So g3, first move for white, might look tempting, but if you calculate further and you find this h5 move for black, you can evaluate the position and see that actually black is slightly better. So, but anyways, always you should look for checks, captures, and then threats or attacks. So, see you in next video.